Okay, this is the 4th episode of the Jason Hedrick Show. We kind of took the summer off. That wasn't really by design. It's kind of water polo season for you, Mage, and it's hot outside. And you made it to the playoffs for this is your 4th year of coaching?
6th.
And have you made the playoffs every year?
Yes.
And you went to the Valley 3 straight years or 4?
4.
4 straight years you went to the championship game.
Yes. And this year we made the semifinals in Division 1. Probably shouldn't talk about any of this.
Why?
I don't know, because it's weird to coach at Porterville and be talking about things like...
I was just giving you some props, man. You're
Thank
pretty
you.
successful.
No, I appreciate it.
That was
I
it.
appreciate it.
We did have
Want me a bong with nothing in it?
You might not should talk about that. That would have made. Then that would. I can see why the Panthers don't like you. No,
This
I
went
think we're
south
fine.
rather quickly.
We'll leave it here. We'll see if we need to edit this out or not. Just about 1 minute prior to going live, we had a section of what do we want to keep off limits, and you didn't say anything at all. Okay. Anyway, I have 2 very special guests. I always love my guests, but one of the reasons it took a while to get this together is a lot of times we just set the date and then I plug in the guests, and I really worked with these guests to make sure it can all happen. There was a lot of different reasons it took a while, but I'm happy to introduce Bob Burke. Hello.
Hey,
And,
how you doing?
And Mike Millsaps.
How are you, Jason?
All right, Bob.
You didn't answer either of them.
What's that?
They both asked you how you're doing.
I'm always wonderful. Bob, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, good question. I live in Three Rivers. Taught high school for 37 years. Retired now for 4. Married. Life is good. Have no complaints. Not much more than that, really.
I guess you're anticipating your wife listening.
Oh, she knows all.
Mike, tell us a little about yourself.
Oh, God, where do I start? I am an ex-bouncer. I ran bouncers for decades around this area. I'm an ex-merchant marine captain, lumberjack. Gosh, I don't know. There's just a lot I've done. The one thing that I've always been is a biker, which I like to think of myself as a biker with a brain and a heart, which is kind of hard to come across these days.
One more thing, Bob. When I was trying to get you, I had another person in mind that I wanted to book with you, and that kind of fell through. And then you actually thought it would be fun to do this with Mike. Why was he your pick?
I really appreciate his posts on Facebook. I became friends of his through you, and for lack of a better phrase, he's very entertaining.
I would agree with
Yeah.
you. Okay, that's it for our introductions. We're just gonna, because everybody might not know stuff about you, so a few really quick questions. They're not hard. We'll just round table it. I'm going to start with Bob. If you had to guess, obviously 1 is average. What do you think Trump's IQ is?
I think it's below average.
Give me a number. Guess. No right or wrong.
4
4?
out of 10.
No, out of 100.
Oh, shit.
4. We'll go with 40.
No, I thought I'd say 38.
Mike.
I would give him a slightly above average. I've dealt with a lot of people who are dumber, but he's certainly unlearned on most of the things he's doing now.
Major.
Fucking genius.
Get up in here.
Excuse me. Fucking genius. He made president.
I agree with you. I'm guessing his IQ is below average. That's just a guess. Bob Burke, have you ever voted for a Republican?
No.
Mike Millsaps.
Actually, yes.
Major?
Nelson Rockefeller.
Oh, good guess.
I didn't hear the question.
You
I'm
voted
sorry.
for Republicans, I think, yes, several times.
Yes, up to the last election.
Right. So me and you have voted for Republicans. These guys, there's only 1 vote for a Republican between them.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, we're getting up there.
Bob, your favorite sport?
Baseball.
Mike?
Football.
Major?
Football.
Jason is baseball. Bob, your favorite president?
Harry Truman.
Mike?
John F. Kennedy.
Major?
Favorite politician?
President.
Oh, president. Probably Polk. He wanted to take Mexico as part of the United States, and I think that would have been a good move.
Mine would be Lincoln if I had to pick a favorite. Bob, besides health conditions or car accidents or things like that, what do you think the biggest threat to people in the United States is?
Probably opioid abuse right now, if I could pronounce that right.
Mike?
I'm going to say a lack of health care.
Healthcare?
Yes.
Major, any ideas?
Paranoia.
Yeah, I don't know if I have an answer to this. Maybe I'll hit on it later on. Bob Burke, are you in favor of repealing the Second Amendment?
No, I own 2 shotguns.
Michael?
I'm conflicted about it. I think a lot. I'm going to say no, but I am also going to say that we need regulation, more regulation than what we have now, certainly.
Major?
I'll take Mike's answer.
Yeah.
I will as well.
Yeah, I hear you. And I don't want to repeal it either, but I definitely don't think that we deal with it the way we need to deal with it. Bob Burke, New England won the Super Bowl last year. Who won the Super Bowl the year before? Anybody. It wasn't just for Bob. Who won the Super Bowl the year before New England won it? Okay. It was played in California in Levi Stadium. Somebody retired after the game.
I'll be Peyton Manning, Denver.
There you go. I knew I could give you guys enough clues. Okay, Bob, have you ever watched a WNBA basketball game?
Yes,
Michael.
many years ago.
No, I've never seen it complete when I've seen a couple of bits.
Major.
I watch for about 3 or 4 minutes, and I lose interest.
Yeah, I've never watched one. Bob, will Facebook be around 10 years from now in the same way it is now?
No.
Michael.
Not in the same way it is now. It'll still be around. I think.
Major?
I agree with Michael.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be the same as it is now. I think won't be as big a part of our lives. Bob, what do you think the biggest problem is with our elections? The number one problem, if you can wave a wand, the number one thing.
Citizens United.
Michael.
I have to agree. There's no bigger threat to our election process than dark money.
Major.
Dark money. I've never heard that before. Mike just said it, but I keep getting tired of agreeing with him, so I'll just repeat.
I always thought it was money until recently, I think, the gerrymandering. I think we could get away from the money if it wasn't so fixed. Last question in this little speed round. Bob, will Trump make it his entire 4 years?
No.
Michael.
No.
Yes.
I'm thinking no, but I don't know. The first topic I'm going to dive into is sexual harassment. So I'm going to throw it out there. Either one of you could answer first. Why is what's happening right now happening? Just tell me who wants to go, and I'll say your name so the listener knows. Mike? Go ahead, Mike.
You know, sexual harassment, once again, it goes back to my bouncing. I have watched women be sexually harassed every night I worked practically for decades. It's gone on for decades. People take it as a matter of course. Oh, that's just the boys being boys. And the reality of it is the boys shouldn't be boys. They should be grown men and not be harassing women. This has been going on for decades, my entire life certainly, and I'm 64 years old almost. And it's built up to a head. It's built up to a point where there has been pressure building on this subject for decades, and it popped. I mean, this is the safety valve, and this is where everything's going to come undone, and all these past transgressions are going to flat come out. We're going to pay for it.
One thing, for me, I just want to interject. Definitely women are harassed in a lot of ways, definitely sexually. To me, there is a difference when there's power involved, when you have authority over them. I think there's no doubt. I'm not trying to say bad things about myself, but I'm sure in the course of my life I've definitely crossed the line and said something or made them uncomfortable, even if I didn't want to. But I've never had a position of power and used that power to try to achieve something. So to me, I mean, I just want to make the distinction between, the way we might deal with women and still might be inappropriate, but then also the way we deal with them when we have a position of power and that type of sexual harassment. And that seems like that one's the one that's really hit the bubble. So go ahead and weigh in, Bob.
I think it's power, age, and relatives. And I think that the biggest problem is, until very recently, women did not feel they could come out and say anything because they had no recourse. The recourse would have been, and we're seeing it right now, it doesn't matter how obvious it is, they'll still be attacked. And when they feel powerless, there's nowhere they can go. I think it hit critical mass with Weinstein. And you go back a little farther to Wiener, but and of course today with Mr. Wonderful in Alabama, I mean we are headed for a real zenith of exposure. And the question I want to see asked is, okay, if the Trump administration condemns Roy Moore because they believe the girls, well, what about him?
Yeah.
And it does not excuse the stuff in the past at all, but it's something that I think sort of hit critical mass, and we're in for a wild ride.
Specifically, I mean, I agree with you guys. It exploded. I mean, a bubble burst. But what specifically? Why?
I think the women that Weinstein had abused reached a position of power where they felt they could speak out. And I think that the article, it was Vanity Fair, I believe, made it possible for them to say something and not lose future employment. Whereas when they were starlets, different story. I mean, I remember as a kid reading books about Hollywood, the so-called casting couch was a given. Guys like Roy Cohn and guys that were not Roy Cohn. His name was Cohn. Other directors, other producers and things like that. It was a given, and that has changed now. That in the past, of course, in Hollywood, you were a contract player, and you could lose your livelihood if you didn't toe the line. But now that those days are over, and women that were harassed by people 20 years ago now are frontliners, and they can say whatever they want.
Right. Can I throw something out
Absolutely,
here just very
Mike.
quickly? I've watched all my life. I have watched men casually and with no aforethought dominate women on a daily basis. I have a different outlook. I was raised by two women. I never had a father. I never had a dad. I mean, I had a sperm donor, but I never had a dad to teach me that dominance of that casual, unconscious dominance that I see in a lot of homes. And you get into these homes, and I watch. When I remember being 20 years old and watching one of my buddies tell his mom to go get him a Coke. Go get me a Coke. Tell his sister, go get me a Coke. And they did. And I remember looking at it and thinking, man, my mom wouldn't put up with that shit. And she wouldn't.
Yeah, Portuguese people are different.
Major, what do you think the problem is?
Just girls nowadays, they look better than they've ever looked before. Okay? I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. So, one last question on this topic. Since there are no women here, do you think they would be happy with our assessment of what's going on? Do you think that we've missed something? Do you think that what do you think they think about what we just said? Do you think that they think we understand it, or we just can't understand it? Bob?
Partly, I don't think it really is about looks. I think it's about power, and I think it's about the ability to wield power without consequences.
I think that the women would appreciate what we have to say, but obviously in 2 minutes we can't even begin to address the huge bulk of their concerns, which is enormous. And they also have a right to feel that way, in my opinion.
What can men do in the future to make this situation better? All of us.
Take responsibility first. I mean, that's the first thing that's going to happen. There's going to have to be an admission of guilt, and then maybe you can work through all the problems that have been caused from this. I mean, this most of this comes back to a dominance ploy. I mean, it's casual. It's to the men, it's inconsequential. Literally, I mean, there are no consequences for the men. For the women that have gone through this, there's grave consequences. They lose their jobs. They lose their reputation. You know.
If a man can't control himself, have consequences in place that will perhaps keep him from acting on said ideas or desires. So perhaps a person with a strong id that doesn't give a rip about what he's doing will be held accountable.
I actually, one of the little sub things I had here was consequences and talk about that. You guys have both hit on that, so I'm fine with that. I asked, what was what do males need to do? What do females need to do to make this situation better? Bob, Mike, whoever.
I don't think it's up to them.
Okay.
I don't think it's up to the way they dress, the way they act. I think it's all about what has been okay to do, depending upon in what position of power you are in. And that goes across the board. When you look at these kind of events, somebody's got something over somebody, and they think they're invulnerable.
I'm hoping that the revelations that are coming down right now from all of these cases, I mean, there's a ton of them. They're still coming thick and fast, you know, and I'm hopeful that this will allow women who have been mistreated, dominated, sexually dominated. I would hope that at this point they can realize that there's no longer going to be the stigma attached to it that there has been with this many women coming out and saying it and this many women getting pissed off. I mean, I'll tell you what, you cut it off in the bedroom, chick, you know, and things will change, you know. Send the old man out to spend the night in the doghouse if he starts doing that stuff to you, you know. But don't be afraid to step up and say, I've got a real problem here and it needs to be addressed.
Right. And I think that's what I'm hitting on. I mean, there's things that guys need to do, and there are things that women need to do. I don't know what those are, but I mean, it's both of us, right? I mean, it's not just guys,
Absolutely.
is it?
Yes and no.
Okay,
because
go ahead.
I think a lot of women are not in a position to do anything. When you're dealing especially with, you know, a relative.
But even if one individual woman is in that position, which I totally understand, I mean, just the masses need to be working on making it easy for that one woman, right?
If we have a cultural sea change, I agree, but I don't think we're anywhere near that yet.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes in the political realm, in the business world, I agree. But when it comes to family issues, I would say we're not there yet. Especially, quite frankly, in certain areas where you live.
Yeah, I don't think we're there either. This has all just happened.
Yeah.
I mean, how could we be there? I mean, this all just happened. I mean, for sure. Go ahead, Mike.
This is the foot in the door. I mean, this is the wedge. I mean, people talk about wedge issues. This is the wedge in this particular issue, and hopefully, the whole idea of a wedge is applying leverage. And if from this point on, and it, you know, from the way it looks to me, these revelations are going to keep coming for a while. This is going to, I mean, it's daily. I just saw James Woods today. You know, the actor James Woods got hammered on, and they need to take the wedge that they've got right now, use it to apply cultural, emotional, and political leverage on that wedge, and start writing some legislation to change this stuff.
I really thought I was done with this, but one last question. If somebody commits a crime, I understand that we need to throw the book at them on this, but what if they didn't commit a crime? What if they did just do something to process? Let me use Louis C.K. I mean, he owned it, said he did it, said those women, their statements are true. He's not happy with himself. I mean,
Louis C.K., is it? Black?
no,
Who was the real heavy guy with the gap? Louis, is that it?
No, different.
Louis C.K.'s
I know,
reddish
okay.
bald hair,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, my bad.
So I mean, I'm just asking, what are the consequences to the people that kind of own it? I mean, do we, like Kevin Spacey's, all his shows are canceled. I mean, maybe he committed a crime. I get it, but I mean, what are the consequences for the guys that have done it and come out now? Go ahead, and then we're done with this topic.
A lot of the consequences are going to take care of themselves. I mean, and like you said, Kevin Spacey, for example, I mean, basically his career is in the toilet. I mean, he can kiss off his career at this stage. There are going to be a number of celebrities whose livings and livelihoods depend on the goodwill of the public, and once that goodwill is lost, say goodbye. Like I said, legally, there's going to have to be legal channels explored on ramifications from this stuff. But right now, I don't know what to say. I haven't had a lot of time to process this yet and see where it's going. I mean, this is still such a hot button wedge issue that, I mean, I'm still gathering facts internally.
It's going to depend upon, I agree with you, on the reaction to the public has to it, because, in years past, a Hollywood actor was considered a womanizer, but that was okay. Now it'll depend upon whether the public wants to see this individual on the screen anymore. And right now we're seeing a real change in that these people, their careers, I think, are over. Some of them.
I think I want to address the 900-pound gorilla in the room, which is us as men, I believe at some point, have to be willing to let the women sexually harass us. And I guess be good sports about it, go with it, whatever, to be supportive so that we know what they've gone through and then can empathize and sympathize, and it'll all work itself out at that point.
Yeah, you're kind of a delicate flower. I know that, Mage. It's I've done 66 weddings. Wow, I've married 66 couples.
Okay.
They're fun. Weddings are fun. 10 years later, it's not so fun when they see you. You son of a
we had a break. We were talking during the break, and there is 5 of us at the table, and 4 of us are ordained, and 3 of you actually have done weddings, and you've done funerals.
I've done funerals.
Yeah, and probably the most religious of everybody here is not ordained, correct?
No.
Next topic, the Russian hacking, and I'll open it up, and you guys can hit on whatever's important to you guys. But the one thing I want to throw out there is with 9/11, obviously people died, and you can't get around that, and that's horrific. But there was a real genius in the plan, in the execution of it, and what they would get as the end result. And I think that's what scares me about the Russian hacking. They hit us in a way that we so weren't prepared for, and not a military thing or anything like that. It was, they just had us fight with each other. And they took our best thing, our freedom, and then exploited it, and we just took it hook, line, and sinker. So to me, it troubles me when people say, oh, it didn't affect the election, or it just troubles me that that's still going to happen again, that we haven't had closure on it, and we're still doing the exact same things that they wanted us to do. To me, it's like 9/11 when we started doing the Patriot Act, and still 5 years later we're renewing the Patriot Act. I mean, the terrorist attack was still working, and I feel like this is still going on. Like I feel like it's not over with, and it's still going on. I'll throw it out there. Mike.
It hasn't even slowed down. I mean, the thing to realize, the comment you made is that the Russian hacking of our election, that's fine and dandy, but it's a Russian hacking of our society is what they're doing. It's not a matter of the election per se. It's a matter they have been stirring up all kinds of problems along racial and political and cultural fault lines, and they're still in the process of doing it right now. And the scarier part is they're doing it on an international basis to all of the other liberal democracies too. If you look at the crap they pulled with the Brexit, that was very much Russian hacked. That whole thing was Russian hacked, and it's a worldwide problem. It's not just us, but they're still doing it today. Right now they're doing it, and they're still stirring up the discontent and anger amongst groups in our country right now.
Bob.
Every day is Christmas for Vladimir Putin. Every day. The dissension is the most I've ever witnessed, and the most bizarre part about it is the dissension in the dialogue has gotten so lowbrow that things can be said or done now that are not addressed in the way they were in decades past. And unless we get a handle on this, and unfortunately we're not anywhere near it, I think we will continue to fall down this abyss of, okay, we've now reached a cliff. Well, we've hit a lot of cliffs, and we keep on going to more of them. And every time I think we're going to get there, it doesn't happen. I used to believe, and I still do, bottom of my heart, that Harry Truman was right. The American people will eventually do what's correct, but I'm questioning that now, and it scares the hell out of me.
Well, as soon as the Russians start helping the Democrats win elections, then we'll get things taken care of.
I guess, and it kind of hits on a topic I constantly hit on, is what perplexes me is how we fix things, and our lack of desire to fix things is really the worrying part to me. It'd be one thing if we recognized the problem and then we just were hammering out the solutions, but we don't even recognize the problems anymore. And this is a perfect example. I agree totally with you, Mike. When you say Russian hacking the elections, it's limiting it to just the elections. When their whole thing was so much wider than that and broader than that, and then the elections were the result of what they did. But this is the troubling part to me, is we're just still doing exactly this. I mean, they're probably still doing it, and even if they're not doing it, they created the avalanche to where we just do it now to each other.
Well, they're playing a very astute politician's game. Richard Nixon played wedge politics. Mm-hmm. His Southern strategy, his other things that he did were brilliant politically, but divisive for our country. They've taken this and they put it on steroids. And now with, of course, social media, everyone's seeing it. And quite frankly, I agree with both you and Mike. It's more than who wins an election. It is the divisions they are successfully creating that were already there, but they've exploited them to a point that I, quite frankly, never saw happening. And we're in a world of hurt.
There is a strong stripe of anti-intellectualism that runs through the Republican rump right wing. Sarah Palin was a good example of it, and it's coalesced and come to a fine head in Trump. And under Trump's guidance, like you said, the level of discourse in this country has dropped off to basically cavemen with clubs. I mean, I've pretty much, I tried for quite a while to be civil and a nice guy about the politics, and I finally just gave up. I forget that. I mean, I know what I feel and how I feel and the things I believe, and I'm not willing to roll over, and that means I have to stand up, and I'm certainly willing to do that.
Excuse my historical references. I use too many of them, but it's kind of like 1952 when Adlai Stevenson, a brilliant orator, was nicknamed the Egghead, and all of a sudden, any kind of intellectual discourse was thrown out the window. And I think we are here now in a much bigger arena with a lot more consequences.
If you're using longer than a 3-syllable word, you're going to be criticized.
This kind of rolls into our next topic. I think we've kind of arrived there, and it's just Trump. And my little notes that I bring over here, I have these little things that I make sure that we want to hit on. Most of the time you guys hit on them, and I just cross them off. I don't have to bring them up. But this one I just kind of left blank because, I mean, where do I begin? So I'll let you guys begin. Just Trump. Go ahead, Mike.
Trump is everything that I do not respect in a male human being.
He's a full head of hair.
Huge hands. Huge hands. I mean, he's an open misogynist. He's dumb as a post. I mean, I'm a big old thug myself, but I like to carry a little bit of intellect with me, I think. He's proud to not have any. I mean, I listen to his speeches, and he's speaking at best a 6th grade level. And he's crooked, he's vile, he's mean-spirited, he's childish, he's vindictive. I mean, and these are things that you want in the top executive of your country with a finger on the button? I don't think so. Yeah.
As a believer in the constitutional process, I have to admit, well, yeah, I am, big time. Sorry, Major. He is president, and that's fine, and I accept that. I would also believe that there are checks and balances, and I believe that his behavior, the behavior of his subordinates, his family, I think under the investigations of Mueller, will find a way to legally hold him and his administration accountable for what they've done. It's the wildest ride I've ever seen. It scares the hell out of me. But he is legally our president. And legally, I think, with the Russian investigation going the way it is, I think we are headed for the biggest constitutional crisis we've ever faced. I think it'll make Watergate look like a pimple.
Yeah, and what I know we're guessing, but what do you think will unfold? I mean, I hear you. I mean, for me, I think, first of all, we don't know what they'll get him on, but let's just say it keeps rolling out the way we think it is, that they're involved. It seems like they are, but does it get turned over to Pence? Is it that simple? Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's part of the constitutional crisis. So I'm saying, how do you think it unfolds? Go ahead.
I think Pence came in late, and today he said that, they said today that Trump Jr., Pence said in October that he had no connection with WikiLeaks. Well, now we know he did. And so I think Pence is cast in the net later. As to what happens, I don't know. I maybe Trump has the ability to cushion himself away from liability, but if he does, the only one left in his administration will be him and maybe Sarah Huckabee. And what does he do then?
Well, what we have to remember, though, is almost irregardless of how
I'll stick up for you. Major distracts our guests from time to time, and he got Mike right in the middle of one of his trains of thought.
Like a thought.
Yeah, so you got yourself back together, Mike?
We're professionals.
No.
He's a good sidekick. He's successfully
really is.
derailed one of my guests every time, and I didn't give him any ground rules. I almost said, Major, I know you know Mike, and I know he can handle anything, and Bob's a super cool dude, but just don't do some of your crap. But I didn't even give him rules, and I'm very proud of you right now, Major. You just showed that to Mike, and Bob tried to see, and you wouldn't let Bob see. So I love you. All right, Mike, go ahead.
I don't remember what I was going to say. You just blew it right out in the speech. I lost it.
That's okay.
And it was a salient point.
I mean, it'll come back to you. What
Must have been.
What about the people?
Oh, I got it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Here's the thing to remember about what's going on with this whole thing. I mean, regardless of whether he actually deserves an impeachment, it's quite likely not to happen because of the composition right now of all of government. Everything is Republican. Everything is Republican dominated.
Now.
But that's the whole election
Yeah.
platform is let's impeach this guy. I mean, that's what the Democrats are running on.
That's pretty much, yeah. But can they stretch it out for another year and a half?
I think that's in the back of their mind.
Yes, I think
They're
it's.
trying their best not to say it.
I totally agree
because
with
that
you.
will not be.
Yes,
Mark,
I
taking the House.
totally agree with you. But,
Elect us and we'll get rid of it.
but everybody's
They won't
winking
vote
at
for it.
everybody's
Yeah.
winking at
Winking a
everybody.
lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if in the current composition of U.S. government, he stands a very good chance of, he could bring down the gates of hell on the country, and he wouldn't get impeached because he's a Republican. He's the Republican not, the Republican representative of everything, and they'll refuse
Well,
to do it.
I agree with you, but you guys went through the Nixon stuff, and everything I know about it is the Nixon people were for Nixon until the day Nixon resigned. And honestly,
they still work.
yes. And what I was going to say, and that's was my final thought on that was like, if Trump does go for whatever reason, like if those people say, okay, he was that, then I'd be happy. But I don't think they're gonna.
Nixon finally cut his own throat by firing the council.
Right.
The independent council. When he did that, then all bets were off. The same thing might be able to happen, but I don't know. I mean, things are so divided now and so split linearly. I mean, you have the far divide and the far divide, and there's nobody in the middle anymore.
I agree, but I mean it's later than I would have liked to have seen, but you still see some of the smarter Republicans realize they can't be a part of this. They have to separate themselves. I mean, McCain, Jeff Flake. I mean, those people aren't liberal people.
But they have nothing to lose.
Yeah, fair enough, but Jeff Flake didn't have to quit. Like he knew he was probably going to lose, but I also, I mean, maybe I'm jaded, but I think yes, he could probably see the writing on the wall. But then he thought he would do this move and see where the dust settles in a year from now. Because maybe this was a heroic move, and maybe this is what people will want a year from now. Maybe he's ahead of the game. He had nothing to lose by trying this.
Well, and McCain is going down in a blaze of glory. I mean, he's going to lose his life to this cancer that he's got, and he literally has nothing left to lose. And at least he's an honest man about everything. I don't agree with his politics at all, in almost anything he's ever done, but that's a good man and an honest man, and he's standing up and. He's speaking truth to power in his own party.
You can see it happening right now with Roy Moore. They have their fingers in the wind, and the political wind is moving. I don't think that their pronouncements today about disqualifying the candidate have anything to do with integrity. I think they are seeing the battle lines are drawn.
Yeah, we've seen this before.
They're seeing their political futures in jeopardy. And they're taking the course now that may preserve their incumbency.
Maybe, but I mean, they're positioning themselves the exact same way they position themselves with Trump and his grabbing comments.
No, they didn't. That's the thing. They protested, but then realized we'll have a Republican in office, so they backed off and they endorsed him.
Yeah, I get you, but I'm still and I get you that the results might be different, but I mean, they still had their finger in the wind. I mean, that same finger was in the wind. It just was blowing a different way.
I agree with you entirely.
Yeah. Our last topic we're going to hit on is gun control, or just the issue of guns. Same thing with Trump. I don't have a whole lot of things because I could easily bombard you guys with little points that I'd like to make, but you're my guest, so I'm just going to throw it out there again. Guns. Bob.
I own shotguns. I live in the mountains. I have no problem owning a shotgun. I don't think I'd ever have to own anything more powerful than a shotgun. And the primary reason I own them is not for home protection. I don't feel threatened. It's for rattlesnakes and things along that line. The Second Amendment is there. However, the Founding Fathers had no conception of our technical skill to build weapons that could kill hundreds of people in a very short time. I firmly believe in an assault weapon ban, and unfortunately, when it was lapsed and it became no longer the norm, we have to go ahead and do it again. But the problem, of course, is there are so many out there. How long will it take for said weapons to be no longer a threat to schools, churches, hospitals, theaters, you name it?
Michael?
I remain conflicted on gun control in general, on guns in general. I owned a .22 rifle once and never shot it. I spent a lifetime with people telling me that they keep guns for protection, and I keep asking them, I'm 64 years old, and how the hell have I lived this long then, you know? I mean, and I'm mouthy, too. Let's not forget that part. And how many more mass killings can we have? Apparently an unlimited number, because apparently the country has just accepted the fact that one of the outcomes of having guns here is, oh, yeah, we're going to go kill 20, 30 people. How many this week? You know, and I think the rest of the world looks at us in shock and awe, the fact that we could allow that many of our citizens to be slaughtered on a regular basis. I would have thought when the shooting at the school took out all those kids, one would have thought that would have at least been the tipping point. But it hasn't even started. I mean, it's just, you know, it's the same thing. Lobbyists dumping money from the NRA onto legislators, and they like being reelected, so they'll keep voting against. And like I said, don't do away with all guns, but come on, man. You know, you see evidence of these people. I mean, I've got friends. I walk into their house, they've got 30 guns. What are you going to do with those, you know? 5 AR-15s right there on their damn wall. You know, I'm a biker. I see a lot of really wild shit. And I just don't think that having an unlimited supply of weaponry of deadly lethal weaponry laying around is a good idea.
I think most Americans should own a shotgun for that kind of covers every range you could use a gun for. Hunting, the best home protection, and if you have a small penis, you can get a bigger gauge. Personally, I wouldn't mind seeing a world with 0 guns, because I think it would be interesting how we would figure out how to get beyond using guns. Machetes would be ugly, but it would be slower wars. I've traveled to countries that have gun bans, and I enjoy them. I enjoy walking around knowing that the playing field's level, meaning if they're going to mug you, they might have to put up a fight. People say if guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. But what I've learned in those countries is that may be true, but the outlaws aren't the common people mugging you. The outlaws are outfitted mafia guys who can get guns in a society with no guns, and they're not the ones mugging me. So I've been to places where I can enjoy walking streets at 3 a.m. and knowing someone's going to have to club me, knife me, or jump me. All better options than being shot.
That's the way I've always felt about you, mate.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you know,
Before sex.
I don't own a shotgun for home protection. It's there.
You probably use it for rattlesnakes.
Exactly. But what I always tell people in these debates about assault rifles, I go is, you know, if you're in your home, if you want that for protection, what you can't miss with a 12 gauge. I mean, what more would you ever want to have? You know,
you won't kill your neighbors.
Yeah, it's not going to go through your wall. You know, but then again, like Mike, I'm 63, and I've never been in a position anywhere near or even thought about using a lethal weapon.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I'm very vocal about is telling Americans to quit being so paranoid of terrorism. I hound them. I say statistically, it's not going to touch you. I also have to remember statistically, these mass shootings, these gun incidents aren't going to touch me either. So I don't want to get so wrapped up in them to where I think that's the norm of American life, because it's not. The amount of people that are dying from gunshots in America, as alarming as they want to say it is, it's still probably not going to affect me, and we put a lot of energy towards it when there's probably other things in the country we could argue over first before we get to that.
My biggest thing, and I, with the guns, it's just our mindset on the guns that they're a solution to something. That troubles me more than the actual gun itself. I was a deputy going on 8 years, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can ask any cop you know. I mean, the first thing a cop tells the dispatcher, when the dispatcher tells you, the RP, the reporting party, they have a gun, and they're not the bad guy. They're the people calling in, something's going on. They say, oh, and the RP has a gun. The first thing the cop says is make sure they lock up their gun. So obviously cops don't feel like it makes it too safe, because if they thought it made it safe, they wouldn't be telling them to lock up their guns. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. That's just the reality of every single call that every cop goes on. So it just troubles me that people, even the president just said it on the last one. He gave props to those dudes with guns on that last one. I'm just like, man, that to me is the problem. We're not talking about how to stop this from happening. We're not even trying to stop this from happening. Like you said, I think we just accepted it. Have we just accepted it, or not? I'm curious.
I think there is a large percentage of the population that has. I'm not part of that percentage. I'm still outraged on a fairly daily basis by what I consider to be a problem that can easily be fixed. It's just there's no will from another segment of the population to get it fixed, and the money that is being dumped into keeping the country from fixing it is enormous, with a heavy-duty lobbying crew.
The gun lobby knows that our memories are very short. How long ago was Vegas?
Yeah.
How long ago was Texas? And all of a sudden now, it's no longer the news.
Right.
And the refrain from the people in the pockets of the gun lobby say, now is not the time to talk about gun control, because they know in 4 days it will no longer be the topic. And thus, their agenda is continued.
Okay, I hit all our topics. I hate to go over time frame I have kind of set there. I can't thank you guys enough. I really, it'd been a long time since I did one of these. I knew when we came back, I kind of wanted it to be special. And I really have loved all my guests, and I mean that. And I feel bad for a lot of them, because we've struggled with the sound quality, and who knows how this one's going to turn out. And I'd love to have those guys all back, but I'm super happy with you guys. I don't know how the end result's going to be, but man, it was a thrill to sit on this table with you guys during the breaks. I'm glad you made this happen, and thanks. I mean that.
Thank you.
Certainly a pleasure with everyone concerned. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Jake.
Kurt, Major, till next time.
Good night.
All right.